Part 46. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 451. Chapter 451, Come to your door for a beating. Brother Cat hugged Grandma's arm and said coquettishly, Grandma must keep her word. Brother Lee also hugged Grandma's waist and twisted around, reluctant to get in the car. Jian, on the other hand, pulled Jiaren's sleeve and quietly stuffed his elder brother with money. Jiaren didn't want it. After all, the third uncle and the third aunt would give them pocket money on weekdays, and the college fees were paid on time. But whether it was the beginning of school or when his sister went to visit Luoan, he would help him like this. He knew that his sister was thinking about him, and if he didn't accept her, she would be worried. So he stuffed the money into his arms and winked with his sister. Sure enough, my sister immediately smiled. After seeing off the children in the morning, the dining table for lunch was empty. Not to mention Mrs. Li, even Tao Hongying, Li Laosi, and Li Lao are not very adaptable. After finally taking one bite, the village started to riot. Jian wanted to jump 3 feet high, and she wanted to watch the excitement after pulling her grandma. With quick eyesight and quick hands, Nanny he pulled off her cloak and covered the young master tightly, then carried her on her back. As a result, as soon as I left the courtyard, I saw Uncle Zhao limping over with a dark face. What happened, brother? Old Mrs. Li asked. Uncle Zhao quickly said, that Zhang Jin found Dajan's house again. Dajan's wife couldn't bear it anymore, so she pulled him and tore him open. Li Lao and Li Laosi came out of the courtyard. Hearing this, Li Lao sneered and said, originally, I wanted to spare his life and wait for the Wang family to settle the matter before dealing with him. But he couldn't wait any longer and sent him away himself. Coming to the door, Li Laosi then said, whether there is one more of him or one less of him, it actually doesn't have much impact. Let's just take care of him today. Let's go to the village chief if you want to clean things up, hold a meeting and let everyone watch. Not only our village, but the other 3 villages also need to clean things up, Li Lao said fiercely. He took Li Laosi and left. Zheng He and Zheng Feng followed him consciously, running errands just in case something happened. Old Mrs. Li also took Jian and Aunt He with her and walked all the way to the yard of Wei Dajan's house. There are already a lot of people gathered here, and everyone looks bad. Seeing Mrs. Li arriving, the villagers all started talking about it. Sun's second sister-in-law shouted, Auntie, look at this shameless thing, he's here to recruit an army to gamble again. The other young daughter-in-law also nodded, yes, Aunt, this person is more vicious than the leeches in the field, and he won't stop until he drains the blood of the Wei family. As a family, the man is the rake for collecting money, and the woman is the box for holding money. Every woman saves money and money in order to fill the box. But who can not hate Zhang Jin, a worm and a thief who lures men into gambling just to steal the money? In the courtyard of the Wei family, Wei Dajan stood in front of the house with a cane, a look of confusion and fear on his face. His 2 children were on the left and the other, not sure whether they were protecting their father or keeping him from coming forward. And Zhang Jin was pinned to the ground by 2 villagers. Sister-in-law Wei didn't care about anything, she sat on top of him and fought hard. Zhang Jin's head had been badly injured, and it was torn apart as if he had vitiligo. The left part has no hair, and the right part is bare. Looking at his face again, it was scratched like a gourd. He screamed in pain again and yelled, let me go quickly, you are so bullying. I just came to see my friends. Is this how your new village treats guests? Hosting guests? You're a bad guest, you're our enemy. Sister-in-law Wei stood up and kicked her hard several times. Maybe she felt that she didn't have enough strength, so she simply jumped up and down on Zhang Jin's back. Zhang Jin almost vomited blood when she stepped on him. I asked you to seduce Dajan to gamble. I made you evil-minded. I made you immoral and conscienceless. I made you. Sister-in-law Wei scolded and jumped. How could Zhang Jin have the energy to defend himself? He only had the energy to beg for mercy. Forgive me, I don't dare to do it anymore. Forgive me, don't jump. Fortunately, at this time, the village chief, Li Laoer, and others arrived and stopped sister-in-law Wei. The village chief waved his hand and shouted, "Okay, my wife, please stop first." Zhang Jin seemed to have seen his savior. As soon as he was free, he crawled to the village chief's feet, crying, "Help, Weavua, I just came to visit the sick, and they beat me like this. It's really unreasonable to kill people. It's a pity that the village chief didn't support him at all. He kicked him over and told the villagers, drag him up and hang him on the archway. I have already notified several villages to hold a meeting. We need to talk about this matter one time." "Yes, village chief," several villagers responded. They immediately stepped forward, held Zhang Jin's hands, supported his feet, and carried Zhang Jin out. Zhang Jin was so frightened that he struggled desperately. The villagers were impatient, winked at each other, and slammed him to the ground twice. Zhang Jin immediately rolled his eyes in pain and did not dare to move anymore. Everyone followed him towards the entrance of the village with a roar. You must know that after Rujintan was divided into the fiefdom of the county owner, this was the first time the four villages meeting was held. Li Laoer stepped forward to help Mrs. Li and said, "Mom, let's go home. You, Fu Niuer, and I have to change our official uniforms. It's best to scare several villages at once, otherwise gambling will not be eradicated. There will always be trouble in the future." "Okay, hurry up and go home." Mrs. Li nodded. "That's it. Broken Gold Beach is Fu Niuer's fiefdom. It's time to let them know who is the master." The family turned around and went home. After getting dressed, they got into the carriage. At this moment, 400 to 500 people had gathered under the archway of Feng Shui Treasure Land. Villagers from several villages were present, as long as they were not old people unable to move or babies in their swaddling clothes. Zhang Jin was hung on the archway at a height of one person, wandering around, trembling like leaves in the autumn wind. He was somewhat lucky at first, but when he saw the Li family getting off the carriage, his heart became completely cold. All the villagers were surprised that the Li family was so solemn and quickly got out of the way. 4 chairs have been placed on one side of the road. Ji Yan sat in the middle, Mrs. Li and Mr. Li sat on the left and right, and the last one was for the village chief. Zheng He and Zheng Feng quickly opened the screen to protect their master from the cold wind. Mami He, Shui Yun and Shui Ling took the teapots out of the car and quickly served hot tea to the masters. He even lit 2 braziers and placed them at the feet of the masters. Actually, no one can drink hot tea at this time, but what they want is the ostentation. Needless to say, everyone in the new village took the initiative to stand behind the Li family and the village chief. Although they usually knew that the Li family had received rewards, they didn't think much of it. At this moment, I saw the 3 members of the Li family sitting in front of them with solemn expressions. The winter sun shone on the gold threads on their official uniforms so dazzlingly. It was like a thick and gorgeous wall that blocked them from all wind, rain, and calculations. They truly felt how lucky they were. As a result, all the people in the new village looked a little more excited, and couldn't help but raise their heads and chests, feeling proud. Looking at Daweisha village again, the people in Dawangzhuang and Xiaoangzhuang shrank their necks, and they didn't dare to breathe. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 452. Chapter 452. Don't mess with the tigress. Uncle Zhao saw these people shrinking their necks like quails, and he really wanted to hit them with his cane. He coughed and raised his voice and shouted, "I've seen the princess, I've seen my uncle, I've seen the old lady, I've seen the village chief Wu." The villagers of Daweishu, Dawangjuang, and Xiaoangjuang finally came to their senses and saluted one after another, but still did not dare to say a word. After all, he was still the most upright person in the three villages. He really couldn't stand the bad behavior of the people in his own village. He also claimed that he had a good relationship with village chief Wu and had some respect in the Li family. So they stepped forward to salute and said in unison, "I have met the princess, I've met my uncle, I've met the old lady, I've met brother Wu." Jiyan and Mrs. Li just nodded, but Li Lao replied coldly, "The three Li Zheng are also here." "Well, today is the first meeting of the 4 villages of Sujintan. With you here, we can handle the matter. It's easier too." Sanlichhan felt uneasy after hearing this, and took another look at Zhang Jin, who was hanging upside down. Li Zheng from Xiaoangjuang asked tentatively, "Uncle, did this second-rate boy make any mistakes that made you angry?" Li Lao shook his head and said, "I have to go to court on weekdays, and most of the time I am in the city. The village chief handles all the trivial matters in the village. I'd better ask the village chief uncle to talk about it." 3 Li Zheng looked at the village chief again, smiling to please him. The village chief snorted coldly and cursed, "Of course this unscrupulous thing made a mistake, otherwise why would everyone come here to brag about him if they were so busy? Although we belong to 4 villages, you also know that the 20-mile radius of Broken Gold Beach is the fiefdom of the princess. Whether it is our new village or your 3 villages, they are all under the jurisdiction of the princess's mansion, and they are all one family. People, right? Yes, yes, brother is right. From now on, we will all be one family and all subjects of the princess." When we talked about this yesterday, everyone was very happy. Li Zheng from Xiaoangjuang quickly agreed. Li Zheng from Dawangjuang also spoke up and said, "Yes, if nothing else, life in Zincan is getting better and better. Thanks to the princess's blessing, everyone is also looking forward to being as prosperous as Zincan." Only Li Zheng from the Weisha village was the shrewdest. He took a step forward and guessed, "Brother, this second-rate guy made a mistake, couldn't he have ruined the friendship between our villages?" Sure enough, the village chief nodded and said, "This thing, together with the casino in the city, lured Wei Daijin in our village to gamble. When Wei Daijin owed a huge debt and couldn't repay it, he forced him to. Wei Daijin went back to the village to recruit people to gamble and pay gambling debts. What is this? This is simply digging into the foundation of our new village, trying to turn our new village into a gambling den, and trying to ruin the good life we have worked hard to build." Everyone in the 3 villages heard a gasp. They thought Zhang Jin was caught stealing, but they didn't expect it was actually a fishing lure. This is so wicked. Who doesn't know that 9 times out of 10 you lose when you bet? There are many gamblers who lose their money, sell their houses and land, and pledge their wives and children. It can be said that if you become addicted to gambling, your family will be ruined as a result, without exception. No wonder Sujintan has to hold a conference with such solemnity. Bah! Li Zheng from the Weisha village spat at Zhang Jin and cursed, "Such a bastard, why don't you beat him to death on the spot?" Li Zheng from the Wangjuang also scolded, "The rabbit hasn't even eaten the grass on the edge of the nest. He actually caught his own family members and exploited them. He is so wicked and evil-hearted." Li Zheng from Xiaoangjuang's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, because this guy was from their village. Although everyone knew that Zhang Jin lived a rough life and occasionally did bad things, no one expected that he would be so bold. "This is because I saw that Zincan was getting rich and life was getting better, so I came here to make plans." Zhang Jin was hung upside down, his head was congested with blood, and his face was as red as a pig's liver. Seeing everyone looking at him with contempt and disgust, he screamed, "I didn't mean it on purpose, I didn't have any bad intentions. I just wanted to be friends with my brother Daijin and wanted to make a fortune with him." "Bah! Your mother's bitch." Wei Daijin's daughter-in-law jumped to her feet and yelled, "If you can get rich, Why are you still wearing cloth shoes in the middle of winter when you are so poor? It doesn't count that you lost everything. Seeing that our army is honest, just come drag him down. You drained all the money from the army, and then forced the army to gamble with the villagers. You are very skilled at doing this. I don't know how many people you have deceived before. Zhang Jin struggled desperately and defended, no, no, this is really my first time. I know I was wrong and I will never dare to do it again. I was also obsessed for a while. The casino manager said that if he pulled me over, he would forgive my gambling debt, so I did it. I really will never dare to do it again. He lied. A young daughter-in-law couldn't bear to listen and shouted loudly, we live next door to Zhang Jin, and he used to drag my men to gamble. My man lost the family money and wanted to touch my dowry. I went to my natal brother and beat him up so hard that my man didn't dare to gamble anymore. The young wife's man's face turned red when his old story was revealed, so he went to pull his wife's sleeves, not wanting her to continue talking. Unexpectedly, my daughter-in-law is a powerful person, so she threw the man away and said angrily, why are you stopping me? Such things should be said, otherwise everyone will not know Zhang Jin's true face, and he will get caught by him if he is not careful in the future. How can the family live a good life if their man is taken to the casino? Yes, the eldest sister is right, the woman next to her also echoed, in my natal village, there was a man who sold his wife and children as slaves because of gambling. A good family was broken up in less than 3 months. Oh, it's so deceptive. Beating this immoral guy to death and inducing people to gamble will only lead to the destruction of their families and their lives. Yes, yes, beat him to death, beat him to death. Let him be wicked, let him harm everyone. Women are more family-oriented than men. Just thinking about them and their children being sold by men who gamble makes them extremely scared. All the fear was replaced by anger, and it rushed towards Zhang Jin. He was hung upside down under the archway, like a target, unable to escape at all. In an instant, the women rushed forward and surrounded him. You pulled your hair, I pulled my clothes, and she took off her shoes. By the time the village chief was telling everyone to step back, Zhang Jin was already looking more embarrassed than a beggar on the street. 2 feet were bare, and the clothes and pants on his body were torn in strips, leaving only the black trousers that were still intact. And the little hair that survived in the hands of Wei Daijin's daughter-in-law also said goodbye completely this time, leaving behind a bare and head. The women felt relieved after seeing it, but the men subconsciously shrank their necks. Don't make the women angry in the future, otherwise the consequences will be really worrying. At this time, the village chief asked someone to move a long bench and asked the 3 of them to sit down. Li Zheng from Xiaoyangzhuang was ashamed and bowed to apologize, brother, it's all my usual negligence that allowed such rat droppings to spoil a pot of soup. I really have no shame to sit down. The village chief personally stood up and helped him sit down, and then said, you can't avoid getting bugs when eating melon seeds. In such a big village, it is normal for there to be some people with bad consciences. You have to live a good life, so you can't afford to have an extra pair of eyes. The beads should be kept at his house every day to watch, right? Don't think about it so much, something happened, let's find a way to solve it so that it doesn't happen again in the future. Xiao Wangzhuang Li Zheng only dared to sit on a stool, his eyes quietly looking at the 3 members of the Li family. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 453. Chapter 453. Give me a slap and a sweet date. Seeing this, Li Lauer said calmly, let's discuss how to deal with this matter first. The bad gambling habit must be eradicated in the 4 villages of Sujintan. Otherwise, even if we make back the gold and silver, we will lose it all one day. Yeah, The village chief threw out a sweet date at the right time. I was originally thinking of sending a few people to your 3 villages this year to guide you in growing melons. What you planted last year didn't really look good, and you didn't sell it for much. Everyone is going to be tired, and we have to let everyone sell more money and share more money, so that the life will be more relaxed. Who would have thought that Zhang a bad conscience thing, would be sidetracked? Let's deal with Zhang first, and then we can discuss growing melons when we have free time. Oh, brother, don't wait until later. Should we discuss such a big matter together today? Li Zhang from the Weisha village quickly stopped the conversation. Li Zhang from the Wangzhuang and Xiaoyangzhuang also nodded vigorously. Li Zhang from Xiaoyangzhuang glared at Zhang Jin fiercely and cursed, "You can just kill such a thing. It can be buried in the ground to fertilize and raise crops. It is of some use. He is the only bachelor in their family. He is dead, no one cares." The eyes of the other villagers were as bright as oil lamps, and their faces were full of surprise and hope. You know, they are looking forward to getting rich like Zinken, and their eyes are red with anticipation. They also sell melons for a few hundred coins, while those in Zinken can sell them for a few taels of silver. The difference is 10 times. If the people in the new village were willing to teach them step by step, they could also grow jade melons and golden fruits like those offered to the emperor. Wouldn't everyone get rich along with it? The village chief was very satisfied with their statement. After thinking about it, he turned to the 3 members of the Li family and asked, "Uncle, old lady, princess, it's hateful that Zhang Jin made a mistake, but now that the year is not over, it's also okay to hurt people's lives. If he ruins Sujintan's luck, why not give him a good beating and drive him out?" Li Laoer nodded, "The death penalty can be avoided, but the living crime is unforgivable. Break your arm, let the family's fleet take it away, and throw it anywhere on the road to fend for itself. In addition, there are no rules without rules. From now on, we will carve stone tablets under this archway. The first rule of Broken Gold Beach is no gambling. The second rule is no theft. I will add more in the future if I think of anything. People should be treated like Zhang Jin." "Yes, uncle has thought carefully," the village chief quickly agreed. The other 3 Li Zhengs were relieved when they heard about this result, especially Li Zheng in Xiaoyangzhuang. His back was breaking into a cold sweat just now, because he was afraid that because of Zhang Jin, Zinken would not let them grow melons in Xiaoyangzhuang. The village chief stood up and called Lu Biatu, "I will reward Zhang Jin with 20 whips, cut off his right hand, and then imprison him. After a while, he will be thrown to the south with the fleet." "Yes," village chief Lu Biatu took out the whip from his waist and swung it at Zhang Jin. Zhang Jin still wanted to beg for mercy, but he started fighting just like that. The long whip fell on him, and he screamed in pain, which made everyone shrink their necks and make their teeth sore. But that's nothing. After the whip was thrown, villagers immediately helped to unload Zhang Jin. Lu Biatu grabbed Zhang Jin's arm and placed it across the stool, but the villager responsible for swinging the stick was a little soft and hesitated. Li Laosi had been standing silently on the side. Now he stepped forward directly without using a stick and kicked Zhang Jin's arm. Zhang Jin's arm broke with a click. Zhang Jin rolled his eyes in pain and simply passed out. The 2 villagers were a little ashamed and immediately dragged Zhang Jin away. For half a cup of tea, no one dared to say a word. It's true that Lu Biatu and others are too fierce, and their operations are as fierce as a tiger's. By the time they came to their senses, Zhang Jin had already lost half of his life. Just thinking about something like this happening to them, everyone subconsciously tightened their legs for fear of peeing. Li Laoer clenched his fists to his mouth and coughed twice, which shocked everyone back to their senses. He then said, "Village chief, register all the villagers in each village and record them clearly. From now on, the 4 villages of Sujintan will be a whole. Whether you work as a laborer or receive benefits is based on the household registration book. Spring is about to begin. We gathered our hands before spring plowing and dug ditches. The hot spring water in the valley is diverted to Daweishu, Dawangjuang and Zioangjuang villages. If it is too troublesome to divert the water to households, we can build a few public bathrooms. In the future everyone has a busy day, and there is a place to take a bath to relieve fatigue. In addition, I will teach you how to plant melons this year. If it is good, I will plant fruit trees next year. As for how to contribute and how to distribute the money earned, you can discuss it and report it. That's it. In short, Broken Gold Beach does not support lazy people. If you work harder, you will get more money, and if you make mistakes, you will get rid of them. Li Zheng and other villagers in the 3 villages were so excited when they heard this that they had long forgotten their fears. Everyone was excited and shouting. Are you really going to lead us to a hot spring to bathe in? Teach us how to grow melons this year and fruit trees next year. Aren't we going to get rich? That's great. Wow, there will be good times in the future. Li Zheng from the Weisha village waved his hand to signal everyone to shut up, and then took the lead and knelt down. Thank you, princess, thank you uncle, thank you, madam, for the reward. The rest of the villagers quickly followed and knelt down and thanked him loudly. At the end of winter, there was still snow on the road and it was very cold, but they couldn't feel it at all. At such moments, their hearts are burning and their minds are full of yearning and expectation for a new life. In the past, they envied new villages, but they didn't know how to get close to them and become new villages. Now, they have a direction. As long as you don't make mistakes, as long as you work more, and as long as you obey, you will have a good life. Li Laoer looked at his niece with a smile. Geo background Yin finally had a chance to appear. She secretly swallowed the snack in her mouth and said with a sullen face and a tender voice, everyone, get up. We are a family from now on. Everyone, please guard your own home and don't let bad people bully us. Broken Gold Beach. All the villagers kowtowed again, got up and secretly looked at the little princess, feeling that she was extraordinarily noble and beautiful. This is their master, the highest status nobleman in Broken Gold Beach. Mrs. Li touched her granddaughter's little hand and felt a little cold, so she said to her son, second brother, let's stop here today. Li Laoer nodded, gave the village chief a few words, and then took his wife and niece into the carriage. Sanli Zheng also told the villagers to disperse, and then discussed with village chief Wu about major matters such as digging ditches and planting melons. Li's screen, brazier, and hot tea were not removed, and the 4 old men also took advantage of them, drinking tea, warming the brazier and talking. Suddenly I felt that conferences like this should be held more often in the future. Ji Yan was still a little curious and didn't know where Zhang Jin was being held. But when she heard that Dr. Zhang offered to treat Zhang Jin's injuries, she understood instantly. Don't ask, the question is that Dr. Zhang has a heart that likes to study medical skills. In a flash, another half-month passed. The villagers in the 3 villages were busy digging ditches every day. Construction has also begun on the Li family's backyard. Zhao Yuru cannot come back from Luoan. Tao Hongying has to think of new dishes and has to go to the restaurant every 5 days, but she can't help the family. Old Mrs. Li decisively took up the chores at home. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 454. Chapter 454, and his future is not bright. Fortunately, there are Shui Yun, Shuiling and Dong Mei helping out at home. Zheng He and Zheng Feng are also diligent and clever, sharing a lot of responsibilities. Ye Tong followed Li Laoer, and it was enough to go in and out of the city. Mrs. Li was afraid of disturbing her granddaughter, and she was also afraid that she would run into the construction site behind and accidentally bump into her. So, after discussing with her daughter-in-law, she also put the matter of learning the rules for her little granddaughter on the agenda. And he, a well-educated nanny who came from the palace, finally had the opportunity to show off her professionalism. She was so excited that tears filled her eyes. Unfortunately, she took the little master for half a day, and the ordinary squatting ceremony did not learn it. Hoya came back. "Are you tired of learning the rules, Funiur?" Mr. Ho stepped forward and took Jiyan's hand before he even took off his cloak and asked. He looked up and down with concern, fearing that the little girl would be wronged or suffered. Jiyan rushed over, hugged her adoptive father's arm, and said with a smile, "No, adoptive father, Grandma told me stories, it was fun. I just learned the rules and squatted dozens of times, and my adoptive father came back." "Dozens of times?" The Marquis frowned and turned around and called Yeshan, "Take the princess to the next door and say something to the old lady on the way. I'll have lunch at home." "Yes, Lord Marquis." Yeshan stepped forward immediately, squatted down, carried the good news and walked out. Jiyan looked at Auntie. Auntie raised her foot and was about to follow, but heard the Marquis say, "Auntie, please stay for a while." Mother He's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly bowed her head respectfully and stood aside. Sure enough, just as Yeshan disappeared at the door with the good news on his back, the Marquis said, "Mommy also knows that Funiur is still young and has a thin body, so she shouldn't be too tired, therefore, she taught her to learn the rules and pay attention to methods. Don't be too boring, don't be too complicated, and don't bring the methods taught in the palace to the little palace ladies at home. How can the princess learn the rules and learn them happily and easily? I need to think more about it." "Mammy," he smiled bitterly. It turned out that the Marquis rushed back in a hurry. He was afraid that the princess would suffer, so he came here to support the princess. But she still hopes to live with the princess in her old age in the future, and she will not treat the princess harshly in any case. This morning, the story lasted an hour, and after only a quarter of an hour of learning the rules, the Marquis felt sorry for the princess. Thinking about how many rules she has not been taught in the future, her eyesight is really dark and she feels that her future is not bright. But she couldn't respond yet, so she could only say, "Don't worry, Lord Marquis, I will definitely teach the princess well and will never let the princess suffer." The Marquis then nodded and said, "Okay, teach the princess well and I will not treat you badly." After saying that, he took a silver coin from his purse and handed it over. "Mama," he quickly knelt down and took it with both hands, "Thank you, Lord Marquis, for the reward. Go down, remember to be careful." The Marquis gave another instruction, and Grandma he bowed her head in agreement and walked backwards out of the door. She held the silver rewarded by the Marquis, and it felt like she was holding a live coal, it was extremely hot. As soon as I walked to the door of Li's house, I looked up and saw the eldest gentleman's carriage coming back. Li Zhensheng got down from the carriage and when he saw Auntie standing at the door, he smiled and said, "What a coincidence. I was just looking for Auntie, but I didn't expect to meet her here." As he spoke, he turned towards Zhang Feng, who was driving the car. Zhang Feng quickly came forward with a piece of food and a box of snacks. "Mommy, the eldest master said that you worked too hard to teach the princess the rules, so I specially pulled a piece of food for you and bought your favorite snacks." "Mammy," he quickly bowed and declined, "Sir, it is the slave's duty to teach the princess the rules. I must be dedicated, but I don't deserve such a reward from you." "Take it, Mama," Li Zhensheng advised, "that child Funiur is naughty, so you will have to worry more about it in the future, but after all, Funiur is still young, and Mama will teach you slowly, so you can't be in a hurry, right?" Mother he could no longer smile bitterly. This was another person who was afraid that she would treat her master harshly. She wanted to say, she didn't dare, she couldn't, and she wasn't willing to let it go. It's a pity that no one believes it. She could only accept the things to reassure the old man in front of her. Sure enough, Li Zhensheng was even happier when he saw her holding something in her arms. While talking, several people arrived in the courtyard. Li Lauer came out from behind, with some dust on his long gown. While patting, he curiously asked Grandma, isn't Grandma teaching Fu Niu or some rules? I was just about to go over and have a look. How is Fu Niu studying? Are you tired? Mom, Fu Niu is still young. Don't be in a hurry when learning the rules. You have to take your time. If he hadn't lived in the palace for decades and had great endurance, she would have wanted to scream to the sky right now. She was wronged. Could it be that she usually gives off a very harsh impression, so why is everyone afraid that she will treat her master harshly? She doesn't dare, she doesn't dare, she doesn't dare. Fortunately, Mrs. Lee appeared in time and rescued Grandma who was almost vomiting blood. She called her eldest son and second son and asked, "What are you doing around Grandma Come here and see Fu Niu perform the squatting salute. It's only been one morning, and she has already learned how to do it. Grandma taught me well." Li Zhensheng and Li Lao hurried into the house, and soon there was laughter in the house. Mama thought for a while and then sent the things back to the penthouse where she lived. Just in time, Shui Ling accidentally got his clothes wet and came back to change. Seeing that Auntie's expression was unusually rich, she covered her mouth and snickered, and asked in a low voice, "Mommy, is it not easy to teach the princess the rules?" Grandma glared at her and asked, "How did you know?" Shui Ling smiled more and more cheerfully and explained, "Because this morning, the old lady has been talking about it 4 or 5 times, sometimes she wants to give snacks to the lady, and sometimes she is worried that the lady is tired, but I want to go next door to have a look, but the old lady won't let me go." Grandma gave up completely and lay down on the Kong unable to get up. "It's over, she has no hope at all. I originally thought that the old lady would be cruel and ask her to teach the princess strictly and provide her with support. Now it seems that this backing does not exist at all. Let's not talk about Grandma's despair. I just want to say that the Li family's lunch table lacked Li Laozi who went to the military camp and Tao Hongying who entered the city. However, it was still lively because of the presence of Mr. Ho and Li Zhensheng. Everyone talked about the construction of the yard at the back, the digging of ditches in the other 3 villages, and the new things in the city. Everyone ate half a bowl of rice more than before. Jiyan didn't eat much when he got up early. Now he was a little hungry, so he ate something extra sweet. But being in the eyes of everyone like this, they felt that the child was tired of learning the rules and his appetite had increased. So, one helped peel the shrimps, the other deboned the ribs, and kept picking up vegetables for the fat girl. Jiyan is smiling and her stomach is round after eating. After the table was cleared, the Marquis carried her for a walk in the courtyard again, euphemistically calling her Xiaoxiashi. When the sun turned to the west, the Marquis was going back to the city. Tomorrow was the big court meeting, and Li Lao also went with him. That night, Li Lao naturally stayed with Mr. Wen, and took the opportunity to listen to Mr. Wen talk about government affairs. At court on the second day, several old ministers quarreled for an hour over trivial matters, quoting scriptures, and Li Lao fell asleep. Finally making it to the next court, he followed Mr. Wen and Lu Haiheng, yawning secretly as he walked out. Unexpectedly, Mr. Wen and Lu Haiheng suddenly stopped, causing him to almost bump into their backs. Finally regaining consciousness, he realized that someone was blocking the road again in front of him. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 455. Chapter 455. If one kick doesn't work, just kick him a few more times. The person who came was a man in his 40s, tall and handsome, wearing the uniform of a third-rank official. Although this man has a smile on his face and seems to be very easygoing, it makes people subconsciously not dare to look down upon him. Li Lao felt vaguely that this person looked familiar, but he really didn't recognize him. Although Mr. Wen and Lu Haiheng were both smiling, their expressions were somewhat guarded. An idea flashed through Li Lao's mind, and he finally woke up. This person was probably Wang Zekin, the eldest son of the Wang family who was an official outside. Sure enough, the man stepped forward, smiled and held his hands. Master Yushi, Master Lu, it's early for the court today, and it's boring to go home. I want to have a drink of tea with Uncle Zhongshan. I wonder if you two can be accommodating. Mr. Wen frowned, but Lu's Haihang smiled more and more kindly and said, "Oh, it's Mr. Wang Zekin, I haven't seen him for several years." What Mr. Wang said, although we are on good terms with Mr. Li, we cannot make decisions for Mr. Li. If others heard what Mr. Wang said, they would think that we were keeping Mr. Li as his own slave to discipline him. Wang Zekin raised his eyebrows, raised his hands and apologized. I was not careful with my words. Mr. Lu, please don't be offended. I have been away for many years and suddenly returned to Kyoto, so I am still a little uncomfortable. His posture was so low, and there were so many people watching around him. Even if Lu's Haihang still wanted to stop him, there was no good reason. Li Lao took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, "Mr. Wen, Mr. Lu, I happen to be a little thirsty. How about having a cup of tea with Mr. Wang? You two go to the yamen to be busy first. I have nothing to do as an idle person. As long as Mr. Wang is not afraid of wasting time, I can afford to accompany him no matter what." Lu's Haihang and Mr. Wen looked at each other. Although they were still a little worried, they could only nod. Mr. Wen said, "Okay, didn't I say that cyclamen has launched a new dish? Let's go have a meal at noon." "Okay, I guess I'll go back early and wait for you first," Li Lao responded, and Mr. Wen and Lu's Haihang left. Li Lao walked with Wang Zekin with a smile on his face. Li Lao was not nervous at all and asked casually, "When did you come back, sir? I heard that you have been away from home." Wang Zekin smiled and said, "Yes, I have been out in the field for 7 or 8 years. I received a letter from home a few years ago saying that my father was ill and my ineffective younger brother was even crazy. I was worried about it, so I quickly wrote a letter to beg the emperor to transfer me back. The emperor's kindness is so great." Li Lao turned around and bowed his hands to the palace. "The emperor is the most kind and considerate of his ministers. He is not like us, a small family, who are petty and can't get through anything." The two were talking and laughing while walking. People who didn't understand thought they were good friends for many years. But who would have known that every word they spoke was quarrelsome and they wanted to make each other more than a dozen holes. He walked out of the palace gate and got into the royal family's carriage. Wang Zekin saw Li Lao looking at the interior of the carriage with great interest, and he thought highly of this uncle with a mud-legged background. "Uncle Li, you are getting on my carriage. Aren't you afraid that I will be disadvantageous to you?" "Unfavorable?" Li Lao was very surprised and said with a smile, "How could it be? I don't think Mr. Wang has any reason to be disadvantageous to me. I'm even waiting for Mr. Wang to apologize to me. After all, Mr. Wang, a smart man, wouldn't know anything about the previous conflicts between our families. At the very least, speaking of my eldest brother, Wang Chuzheng, the son-in-law who was snatched back by your Wang family, you should say sorry on behalf of your father and your brother, right?" Li Lao said this unceremoniously, and his face turned cold. "Mr. Wang is a merchant, he has little education, and it is understandable that he is arrogant. Mrs. Wang is old, and it is understandable that he is confused. But Mr. Wang is an important minister of the 3rd rank, an official outside the country, and the parent of a common people. If you don't distinguish right from wrong, then there is no need for us to drink tea today." Wang Zekin was silent for a moment, and finally smiled. "Uncle Li said something serious, Mr. Wang was just joking." Li Lao raised his eyebrows and did not respond. The eldest son of the Wang family is very cunning. He was the first to show his sword, but unfortunately it was like piercing cotton, without any effect. Soon, the carriage arrived in front of a tea house. Both of them wore official uniforms. As soon as they got off the carriage, they were warmly welcomed upstairs by the shopkeeper, who opened the best box. Li Lauer frowned slightly, which made Wang Zekin curious and asked, "Uncle Li thinks this tea house is not good, then let's find another one." Li Lauer shook his head and asked, "Master Wang, does he know how much money it costs to open this box, including tea and snacks?" Wang Zekin thought he couldn't afford the money, so he replied, "1 tael or 80 tael is enough." "Uncle, just order the tea and snacks you like. I agreed to treat you today." Li Lauer waved his hand, "Master Wang, does he know how much a pound of japonica rice costs in Zinda today? It's 50 cents. This is already the highest price in the past 20 years, and when we drink tea, we have to drink 200 cents a pound of japonica rice. These 200 kilograms of japonica rice, mixed with coarse grains and wild vegetables, are enough for a family of 5 to live for half a year." Mr. Wang was born into a wealthy family, so maybe he doesn't think so, but our family is an ordinary farmer, and now my mother is a nobleman. I still have to weed the vegetable garden. Wang Zekin was unhappy when he heard this, and finally turned cold. "Uncle Li, are you saying that I made the mistake of inviting you to tea today?" Mr. Li shook his head and refused to give in at all. "It's true, I don't know, I just feel that I can't afford it. The Wang family has this money, so why not build a porridge shed and do good deeds? There is really no need to waste it on me, because we both have money. Family matters cannot be solved with a sip of tea. Uncle Li has made up his mind to become an enemy of our Wang family." Wang Zekin straightened his back, with a bit of arrogance on his face. "It's not my fault, but even the 10 Li families may not be our opponents. We, the Wang family, has accumulated hundreds of years of experience, and there is no way they are afraid of a bunch of idiots." Li Lauer sneered and responded, "Whether we are afraid or not, we can't say." "But, you said that our Li family is mud-legged?" "Yes, we are indeed mud-legged, but there is nothing wrong with being born in mud-legged family. Master Wang is back from Sichuan, so he should know that there are moso bamboos in Sichuan, right? Standing in the mountains, he has been silent for 4 years and lowered his head to take root. When the spring breeze of the 5th year rises, he will be there every moment. The skyrocketing price may have reached the sky in just a few days. Our Li family is like this. Aren't you also afraid of the speed of our Li family's rise, so you invited me to tea so politely? Otherwise, with the way your Wang family behaves, you can trample us to death. It's absolutely impossible. It will be a waste of time." Li Lauer's eyes were bright and frightening. He knocked on the table and continued with a mocking look on his face, "Your Wang family has accumulated hundreds of years, just like that tall building. It is indeed majestic, but no one has seen that the foundation of the tall building is rotten, right? It is difficult to build a tall building. But to fall down, maybe just a kick from an outsider. Of course, it may not fall down with just one kick, but it doesn't matter. Our Li family has many children and grandchildren. With one kick per person, we guarantee that it will get what it wants and it will be broken into pieces." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 456. Chapter 456. Boss Wang is a good sparring partner. Wang Zekin's face turned livid with anger. Not only because of Li Lauer's threat, but also because he knew in his heart that Li Lauer was right. The foundation of the Wang family's tall building was rotten. He has been away from home for many years and thought that his family would be his strong supporter. But when he came back this time, he discovered his father's ignorance, his brother's arrogance, and the extravagance of daily necessities at home. If the capital had not been moved, it would be okay for the Wang family to live in a corner. But now everything is under the emperor's nose, and any small mistake may lead to the destruction of the Wang family. But the family members didn't understand it at all, and they just wanted to trample the Li family under their feet. You must know that the Li family has already made a name for themselves in front of the emperor, and they can no longer be insulted casually. What's more, the Li family also has the support of Marquis Xinting, the censor, and the Lu family, the great achievements of donating food, and 2 titles and 1 imperial edict. This has become a trend. How can it be so easy to deal with? If it were easy to deal with, why would he be so condescending today and come here to listen to a lecture from a mud-legged guy? Li Laoer couldn't bear to waste time with Wang Zekin, so he stood up and said, "We have different paths and we don't want to work together. Your family and I have been going back and forth for a long time, and each has his own victory or defeat. Our Li family has always been of the same mind. Does not cause trouble, but is not afraid of trouble either. You Wang family still want to continue to be enemies of our Li family, then let your horses come over and we will continue. Sir Wang, take care of yourself." With that said, he walked out the door and went straight downstairs. As soon as he went out, he saw Wen Hai standing next to the carriage waving, and Li Laoer hurried over. Mr. Wen and Luz Haiheng were sitting in the carriage. Luz Haiheng was bringing tea to drink, but Li Laoer grabbed it when he got in the carriage and drank it all in one gulp. Luz Haiheng was funny, "Didn't you go drink tea? Why are you still so thirsty?" "Don't mention it," Li Laoer waved his hand, "how could I have any intention of drinking tea in front of a poisonous snake? Taking advantage of the fact that drinking tea costs too much money, I gave him a lesson, and both the tea house owner and the waiter heard it. If someone accuses me of drinking tea with him in the future, I won't be passive." "He's not really asking you to drink tea, is he?" Mr. Wen asked as he poured tea for Li Laoer. "Of course not," Li Laoer rolled his eyes, "he is using me as a mallet to deceive me, trying to find fault with our family, and then deciding whether to take action immediately or endure it for a while." Luz Haiheng snorted coldly, "This Wang Zekin is famous for hiding his secrets. Even if he reconciles with your family, he can't take it lightly. He might take a bite at some point." Li Laoer thought of Wang Zekin's face just now and laughed loudly and said, "I'm afraid the people he usually deals with are all old foxes, and they pay attention to being friendly on the surface. But when he met me today, he was so embarrassed that he was so embarrassed." Having said that, he repeated the conversation between Mao Zhu and Gao Lu. Sure enough, both Mr. Wen and Luz Haiheng couldn't stop laughing. Luz Haiheng even patted Li Laoer on the shoulder and shouted, "You are bullying the Wang family, which has only a few brothers, and yet you are so mad at them. Ha, you kick me, I kick you, one kick after another, send the Wang family's tall building to collapse." Li Laoer spread his hands and looked innocent. "Who asked him to say what he has accumulated over 100 years? Our Li family has accumulated over 100 years, but their family is financially powerful, while our family is prosperous. Okay, let's not talk anymore, let's go to Xianqi. I'm getting hungry," Mr. Wen shouted to Wen Hai to drive. Luz Haiheng also followed up and said, "Yes, hurry up, I have to have a drink for this matter today. I am happy to think that Boss Wang is exhausted. When I was a child, my father often used him as an example to beat me." The carriage drove away quickly. Wang Zekin in the tea house box no longer saw the carriage, so he looked away. His confidant came forward and asked, "Sir, the Li family is too arrogant. Can you teach them a lesson?" Wang Zekin shook his head, "Look again, what he said is right. There is indeed something wrong with the foundation of our Wang family. When I think of a way to repair the foundation, when I see it again, is it the Li family who has broken a leg, or my Wang family?" Down, Chang Sui did not dare to say anything and retreated silently. Li Laoer guessed that Wang Zekin was embarrassed by him and was afraid that he would be angry. As a result, Wang Zekin did not make any changes during 2 consecutive court meetings, and even greeted him warmly when he saw him. Li Lao became more and more wary in his heart, but his face was more enthusiastic and his smile was brighter than Wang Zekin's. Isn't it just acting? Who can't do it? You finish singing, and I will appear on the stage. I will take turns singing, chanting, and beating, and all the 18 groups of I will come and have a show. As a result, the two of them didn't feel anything was wrong. Both of them were in high spirits, but the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty were confused. These days, can all natural enemies be friends? Has the world changed, or have they failed to keep up with the trend? Mr. Wen is very happy. He often talked to Li Lao about these intrigues and sword fights, but Li Lao was a kind-hearted farmer at heart and never understood. In terms of defense, he can barely protect himself, but if he wants to attack, he has no idea how to attack. Now that Wang Zekin, the whetstone, has come to his door, Li Lao has no choice but to fight, trying hard to polish himself until he is slippery, and he can show off his sharp blade at any time and stab him. This is simply a huge unexpected gain. Mr. Wen hoped that Wang Zekin would figure it out later and work as a training partner for Li Lao for a while, then Li Lao would completely grow into a qualified courtier. Let's not talk about Li Lao's rapid growth, just say that March has arrived in the blink of an eye. This side of Zindu is much warmer than Sibei and the original Kyoto. There is no heavy snow to close the doors in winter, and spring comes very early. The water diversion projects in Daweishu, Dawangzhuang, and Xiaoyangzhuang have been completed. A public bathhouse is built at the beginning and end of each of the 3 villages. The one used by the men is at the end of the village. There are several pools as big as fire pits built in it, filled with hot springs. Everyone jumped in like dumplings, took a dip, chatted, had water fights, and wanted to lift the roof of the house in excitement. The women's bathhouse was designed more carefully considering the woman's privacy and reputation. The bathhouses are all small pools 3 feet wide and 4 feet long, with a blocking partition in the middle. Basically ensure that there is only one person in the family. When you take a bath, close the door so that no one can see inside. It is extremely unlikely to cause some problems, such as seeing a birthmark on a girl, publicizing it everywhere, slandering the girl's reputation, forcing the girl to marry, etc. Women are not allowed to come or go near the men's bathhouse. Near the women's bathhouse, men were beaten to death for showing up. In short, regardless of the excitement of the men or the caution of the women, every village has achieved freedom of bathing. Thinking about the spring planting that is about to begin, and the melon seedlings going to the ground, everyone is full of hope for the future life, as if the life has suddenly become more interesting. In the new village, the Li family's backyard has also been built. The main house did not use a large open space like the front yard, but chose a small suite with light in the front and dark in the back. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 457. Chapter 457 Super Large Rollover Scene. In this way, there are 5 sets in the main house and 3 sets in the west wing. There is no house built on the east side. Instead, a grape trellis was built along the wall. Swings and chairs were tied under the trellis, and tables and chairs were placed. Plant grape seedlings at this time. When summer comes, you can eat snacks and play directly under the grape trellis when you enter through the corner door connecting the front and backyard. The middle room in the main room is slightly larger, and Mrs. Li lives there. Living in the bright room, doing needlework and speaking generously to anyone who comes, the dark room at the back is where to sleep at night. The room next door is Jiyan's small world. The outer room is the study room and activity room, and the inner room is the bedroom. Of course, she is still young and the family does not allow her to live alone. On weekdays, Shuiyun and Shuiling stayed outside to watch the night, while Grandma He still stayed in the wing. The rest of the suites are shared by Tao Hongying and Li Laosi, Zhaoyuru and Li Laosan, and Jiawen, and Wenjuan. The last three are spares. Jiaran and other brothers, whoever gets married can choose one as a place to return to the old house. In this way, the only people living in the front yard were Li Zhensheng and Li Lao'er, who didn't know whether they would remarry, along with a group of unmarried sons and nephews. After the hot pot banquet was held at home, Ji Yin accompanied her grandma and mother and couldn't wait to move into the backyard. In this way, everything at home was basically arranged. Li Laosi and Li Yong felt relieved and returned to the military camp. The Marquis also sent the chief steward of the home mansion to deliver food and drink supplies every now and then, but he rarely came back every 10.5 months. The barbarians in the north of the Yangtze River are ready to move again after a winter dormancy. The docks on the riverside must be defended, and the enemy must be kept outside the defense line. This is easier said than done. Many times, many people are tired of ordinary but trivial days, but they don't know that such days are obtained by countless people using their flesh and blood to protect them to the death. While he was busy, outside Zindu, the warblers were flying, the grass was growing, and the willows were green and the flowers were red. On the most beautiful April day in the world, countless people walked out of the city and flocked to the free and vast wilderness. Going for an outing, admiring flowers, fishing, and boating, everyone spent their time squandering the grievances of the winter. The hot spring valley of Broken Gold Beach is a good choice. Soak in the hot springs and admire the bougainvillea trees covering the cliffs. The flowers and leaves are more lush than the waterfalls. They are swaying in the spring breeze and are particularly enchanting. Looking forward a little longer, the orchard will be full of flowers soon. It will be a rare treat. It's a pity that the people in the new village seem to be afraid of having too much money, so they insist that the wooden houses or small courtyards can only accept a certain number of guests, and the maximum number of individual guests per day is 30. It provoked many people who wanted to go into the valley to join in the fun, but they couldn't. Of course, anyone who can come in will be praised. The hot springs are good, the scenery is good, the service is good, the food is good. In the new village, every household is also very busy. A few days ago, the Li family wanted to make bean paste, but the back garden has become a new yard and there is no room for the sauce jar. Of course Mrs. Li will not be troubled, because the gardens of her neighbors Yes family and Kui's family are still there. So the Li family's sauce vat was moved to the Kui family's vegetable garden. Today, the weather is fine, cloudless, and the sky is extremely blue. The spring breeze blows on my face, neither cold nor hot, and feels very comfortable. In such good weather, it would be unreasonable not to do some work. Mrs. Li carried the basket and led her granddaughter to rake the sauce vat. On the way, she also pulled out some sprouting green onions from Kui Garden's house. Sprouted green onions are old green onions from last year and are a bit spicy, but when placed on the table together with washed young wild vegetables and dipped in fried egg sauce, they are also a good companion for meals. Especially the men in the family, who are all natives of the north, like this one. Mrs. Li finished raking the sauce jar without closing the lid. She planned to dry it in the sun more to ferment it faster. Ji Yin was curious, so he raked it a few times, and then looked at the green onion leaves on one side, suddenly feeling a little greedy. She pulled out an onion, brushed the leaves with her little hands, and ran to the sauce jar to get some sauce. The sauce jar was not high from the ground, only reaching Ji Yin's shoulders. She put her feet up and reached in. The green onions were only 2 inches away from the sauce. She tried several times, she was so tired that she choked, her face turned red, but she still couldn't reach it. So, her bad temper got worse, she grabbed the edge of the jar with one hand and jumped hard with her feet. Mrs. Li was squatting and plucking onions. She didn't hear her granddaughter's movement for a long time, and her intuition felt a little bad. When she turned around, she saw her granddaughter's shoes disappearing into the mouth of the sauce jar. She was so frightened that she threw away the basket and green onions, rushed over in 2 steps, and lifted her granddaughter out in one go. The fat girl who was fair and clean just now has become a now, from head to toe, covered with miso. Ji-Yan wiped her eyes and was still a little confused. Who buried the sauce vat halfway underground? She thought it was only a shallow layer, but she never thought that the sauce tank was deep enough for her to take a bath. Mrs. Lee looked at the sauce jar and then at her granddaughter. She didn't know what to say for a long time. She wanted to give her granddaughter a pat, but after searching for a long time, she really didn't know where to start. Ji-Yan also stretched out his arms like a human-shaped clothes hanger, letting the miso drip onto the ground. The grandfather and grandson looked at each other in silence for a long time, and the atmosphere was very awkward. It is a coincidence that at this time, the school was just over. The naughty boys ran out in a swarm and ran home. Passing by the Kui family's back garden, the sparse wooden fence could not block anything at all. A naughty boy seemed to have discovered a new world. He pointed at the good news and shouted loudly, "Funiur, have you fallen into the cesspit?" I was shocked by the good news. You just fell into the cesspit, and your whole family fell into the cesspool. Unfortunately, when she opened her mouth, the doenjang stained on her upper lip fell down, and she subconsciously licked it. The boys were eerily quiet for a moment, and then they exploded. A boy with the loudest voice shouted, "Run, Funiur is crazy, she actually eats shit. Mom, Funiur has eaten shit. Help, help." The other boys ran away while shouting, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ji-Yan's face turned dark. That boy who shouted for help, are you serious? If you drop a sauce vat, it can turn into a zombie and eat you. She couldn't bear it any longer, so she slapped her face hard, and finally shouted, "This is doenjiang, Dujiang." It's a pity that the boys can't hear it anymore. For the first time, Mrs. Lee did not protect her granddaughter, because she was laughing so hard that she could not stand upright, and tears came out. "Funiur, ha ha, Funiur is not angry, grandma knows, ha ha ha, I know it's Daejiang. Da-chan." Ji-Yan stamped her feet angrily, throwing the miso soup everywhere on her body. She will never eat green onions again in her life. At this moment, Grandma He and others heard the commotion and came around from the back door of Lee's house. Seeing the young master like this, they tried their best to hold back their laughter and hurried forward to help. But before they could carry the little master back to the next door, the naughty boys had already grabbed their wives and ran over. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 458. Chapter 458. Society is dead. Mom, look, look, Funiur has eaten shit. The naughty boys pointed at Funiur and jumped, their expressions still full of shock, but also a little bit more pitiful. Isn't the Lee family rich? Isn't Funiur the princess? Doesn't she usually have enough to eat? You can't eat then. If I had known better, I would have given her one of the white steamed buns at home. Ji-Yan saw everything from their eyes, but was unable to refute. She was completely numb. A lifetime of fame was ruined here. Which is on duty today? Hurry up and take these stupid boys away. She is willing to give money, money. The little wives who were pulled over by the children to watch the shit man were biting their lips now, fearing that one of them couldn't bear it anymore and would roll on the floor laughing. A young daughter-in-law who was very familiar with Mrs. Lee on weekdays shook her shoulders and stuttered, "That, aunt, haha, misunderstanding, this must be, haha." She tried hard for a long time, but she still couldn't say a complete sentence. It's a pity that her son didn't know my mother's hard work, so he still grabbed my mother's clothes and shouted loudly, "Mom, I didn't lie to you, I saw Funiur licking." The daughter-in-law covered her son's mouth, fearing that her son would try to kill her. The sauce vat was right next to it. Of course they could see it clearly and knew that Funiur must have dropped the sauce vat. But it's really, so similar, so similar. Ji-yun's eyes were empty at this moment, and he had completely laid down and allowed himself to be laughed at. Today is a piece of black history that will definitely not be erased in her life. She shook her wet arms, turned her head and said, "Milk, I think it can still be used after I wash it." "Can it be used?" "Ah, it can be used, of course it can be used." Mrs. Lee finally came to her senses and responded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, wash up quickly." She quickly took off the key from her waist and handed it to Shui Ling, "Open the door to the front yard quickly and take Fu Niu to have a good wash. Also, Shui Yun, go home and bring me the bottle of Osman Thus oil that Zhen Sheng bought for me quick, quick." He Yan couldn't care so much. He bent over and carried the sauce Ji-yan people, and ran to the front yard. Just after turning over the corner door, the laughter of the back garden came over. "Ha ha ha, oops, my belly. Ouch, ouch, I really can't live anymore, I'm laughing so hard. Why did Fu Niu fall into the vat? None of my naughty boys have ever done this." The little wives couldn't bear it anymore and burst into laughter, almost rolling on the street. This time, it was the naughty boys' turn to be confused. They looked at each other, and one of them put his hands on his hips and told me, "Mom, sir, you can't laugh at your friends." Fortunately, Ji-yan didn't hear this, otherwise she would have screamed in the naughty boy's ear, "Brother, you know, you understand, but what did you think just now? There are hot spring pools in the two wing rooms of the Kui family. Not only can Ms. Kui take a bath when she comes, but it is also very convenient for bringing guests." Now, Ji-yan took off all her clothes and jumped into the pool like a fat white dumpling. If possible, she would even want to take off her hair. Grandma he was running around the house, and the water inlet and outlet had to be opened to the maximum, otherwise the hot springs in the bath would quickly turn into soup. They also need to prepare bath beans, clean clothes, and a charcoal basin for drying the young master's hair. Of course, she also had to change her clothes, because just now she was holding her mistress who looked like a loach, and now she was also covered in miso. It took a full hour, until Ji-yun's skin was so soaked and wrinkled, that she finally let herself go. After washing, Ji-yun combed her hair again and put on clean clothes. Mrs. Lee had been waiting outside. When the door to the penthouse opened, her granddaughter turned back into a clean little fairy. She breathed a sigh of relief. She asked in a low voice, "Well, Fu Niu, what do you want to eat tonight? Grandma will bake sugar cookies for you, okay?" "Okay, the pie is delicious, let's make some porridge," Baba responded to the good news. Old Mrs. Lee nodded quickly, "Okay, okay, I'll just steam the buns and bring out breakfast for tomorrow morning." Grandparents and grandson chatted awkwardly all the way. After finally walking back home and sitting on a chair, Tao Hongying came back from the city. She habitually hugged the fat girl and sat in her arms as soon as she entered the door, and then talked to her mother-in-law, "Mom, the restaurant business is really getting better and better." Really, Mrs. Lee was afraid that her granddaughter would be embarrassed. When her daughter-in-law said this, she smiled and said, "Of course it's good. Every day we make a fortune, others can't wait for it." Tao Hongying still wanted to speak, but suddenly she lowered her head and sniffed twice, frowned and asked, "Mom, have you fried eggs with sauce at home? Why does it smell like sauce?" Old Mrs. Lee was frozen there at that time, opening and closing her mouth several times, not knowing how to explain the huge misunderstanding just now. Unfortunately, at this time, Li Lao hurriedly ran back from outside and shouted before he could enter the door, "Mom, what's going on? I heard that Fu Niu fell into the manure pit." Old Mrs. Lee slapped herself on the forehead and gave up the struggle completely. "Oh my God, this matter can't be solved." Ji-yan covered her face, jumped off the ground, and ran back to the backyard. Tao Hongying took her second uncle's words seriously. Her eyes were as wide as bells, and she stood up at that time. Mom, Funiur is really bad. No, no, Mrs. Lee waved her hands desperately and said quickly, it's a sauce jar, a sauce jar. She quickly recounted what had just happened, and finally added, the sauce jar was too high, so I buried half of it in the ground. Funiur thought there wasn't much sauce, so she dove in. It happened that the school was out again, so those days a naughty boy shouted. Tao Hongying and Li Laoer thought about it for a while. Thinking about the fat girl covered in miso and the shock of the naughty boys, the scene was so touching. Neither of them spoke. They both lowered their heads, as if they had stepped on a wire under their feet, and their whole bodies were trembling. Old Mrs. Lee was also dumbfounded and shouted at them, laugh if you want to, don't hold it in, my belly still hurts. Tao Hongying and Li Laoer, as well as Grandma He and Shui Ling, all laughed loudly. This misunderstanding is really too serious, and it's the kind that even the great Luo Jingxian can't explain. Jiyan was lying on the Kong in his suite, rolling around and muttering, death to society, ah. Tao Hongying finally suppressed her laughter and chased her to her daughter's room. When she heard this, she thought her daughter had been laughed at too much, and she felt angry in her heart. She hurriedly stepped forward and hugged her daughter, and asked, shoot to death? Who are we, Funiu, going to shoot to death? We can't do this. Even though everyone thinks it's funny, they don't really want to laugh at you. Besides, it just fell into a saucepan. Let's be more careful in the future, right? You are still young and have short arms and legs. This is inevitable. You won't be able to avoid it when you grow up. Jiyan touched my neck. Thinking of what happened just now, I felt extremely sad and angry. Mom, they said I fell into a manure pit, let it go, and they said I eat shit. Wow, they made me so angry. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 459. Chapter 459, Let's lean against a big tree to enjoy the shade. Tao Hongying tried her best to hold back her laughter, her belly trembling non-stop. Seeing that her daughter was about to explode, she quickly tried to coax her, what are you doing with a bunch of stupid boys? My daughter is the princess of the princess. We must be generous and have a big picture. Yes or no? Jiyan became more and more frustrated. Yes, I am the first princess in Tianwu who fell into the sauce vat. Tao Hongying couldn't bear it any longer, so she laughed so hard that she hugged her daughter and rolled around. In the front yard, the village chief and Uncle Zhao also heard the news and came quietly to inquire. Hearing that Jiyan just fell into the sauce vat and was not a cesspit, the old men breathed a sigh of relief and became more and more serious about it. The village chief quickly stood up and said, no, Funiur is the princess and the little master of our Sujintan. I have to go and talk about it. Don't let the brats make random noises, and everyone should keep their mouths shut. Is it possible that if Funiur makes people laugh, everyone's face will be lightened? A bunch of idiots, I have to go and knock a few words. Yes, the little girl is thin-skinned, we should be more protective. Uncle Zhao also nodded, and then took Uncle Wei and a few others to get up and follow her. Actually, the young wives had just wiped away the tears from laughter, carried their sons home, and given instructions. Moreover, most of the villagers are busy in the fields and don't know about it yet. As a result, these old men's instructions turned out to be bad deeds with good intentions. In the entire new village, on every dinner table, the topic of the night was inseparable from the sauce vat. For 3 days in a row, Jiyan stayed in the room. Let alone going out to play, I have never even been through the backyard gate. Because she has made up her mind to be a dignified and steady princess, at least she can't do anything embarrassing again to refresh the dark history of losing the sauce vat. So she learned the rules from Grandma He in the morning, learned how to be a nun in the afternoon, and got into the space when she was alone in the evening and was busy raising seedlings. Watermelon seedlings, cantaloupe seedlings, eggplant seedlings, bean seedlings, cucumber seedlings. In short, she turned her grief and anger into strength, and kept planting, moving, and planting. The busy little figure filled the space and the small yard was running around. The little green snake in the cage on the tree forgot to ask for eggs, and the chickens, ducks, geese, pigs, and sheep thoroughly enjoyed the special treatment. These days, they have food to eat every meal. Instead of the previous situation, the master only thinks of feeding them every now and then, and he is hungry when he says he is hungry. Good news is rare and diligent, and the results are remarkable. Not only that the vegetable garden and 5 acres of land in the small courtyard of the space were planted, Dongmei and Yeshan almost broke their legs. Almost every night, they have to transport rice seedlings from Zhenjiazhuang to the new village. The village chief and others were overjoyed. This year's melon vines were twice as much as last year's, which was enough for their own village to plant, and part of it could be given to Daweishu and 3 other villages. There are also those vegetable seedlings, each one is 1 foot high. Planted in the ground, new vegetables will be available in less than a month, which is at least half a month earlier than other people's homes. Send it to the valley when the time comes, and you may be able to make more money. Daweishu and several other villages were even more excited. They dispatched 100 people and 10 vehicles and made 3 trips back and forth just to transport thousands of melon seedlings. The way the villagers carefully held the melon vines was no different from holding the golden vines. The head of the Weisha village was hoarse from shouting. He was afraid that anyone who didn't try his best would fall over and crush 2 melon vines. He would probably die of heartache. Previously, the hot springs were connected to 3 villages. The 3 villages contributed labor and food, but the purchase of clay pipes and the like were all supported by the new village. Therefore, the 3 villages have agreed to plant melon seedlings this year. At the end of summer, they will sell the melons and get 40% of the money sent to the new village. They are the subjects of the princess, and they should provide for the princess. The remaining 60% will be shared more by the families who have left the riverbank. People who work and look after the melons on weekdays will also be paid, and the rest will be shared equally among the whole village. Because this financial path was specially given to them by the princess and the people in the new village, so that every household could have income and live a good life. There is no need to worry about food, drink, and clothing, and the village will be stable. There is no need to worry about being tempted by outsiders, no need to worry about people stealing chickens and dogs, committing crimes. I believe that in less than 3 years, the living conditions of each family cannot be said to be on par with Zinken, at least half of them. Every time I think about this, I wake up laughing even after sleeping for 3 days, and I become more restrained by the villagers, for fear that someone will be crazy and ruin such a beautiful prospect. The village chief is a master at brainwashing. He often chats with 3 people and slaps a sweet date. The old man is very good at using it. Just like this moment, he and Sanli were squatting in the field, smoking their pipes and pots, and saying, "I give you these melon vines, you must watch them carefully, don't let the ignorant people in the village let you know it's a disaster. Otherwise, if anything good happens in the future, I won't be able to speak to your uncle." He raised his pipe pot, nodded at the ridge in front of him, and continued, "Do you know what is grown here? It's corn and potatoes. These are the auspicious seeds that the uncle got from Fanbang Hungmazi. Last year, we planted hundreds of acres. After harvesting, we dedicated them all to the emperor. The emperor was very happy. The nobles and officials in the court have been fighting for it since the first month. They all want a few kilograms of seeds and take them back to grow at home. There is no need to rob the village, because the seeds were brought back by our great master all the way. You guys have worked hard this year. This land will produce high-yield grain in the autumn. Next year, I will beg your uncle to give you a few kilograms of seeds. Seriously, Dawaisha villager Zheng asked in surprise, and the other two Lichhans also had their eyes shining and smiled from ear to ear. The people in Dawaisha village are making repeated assurances, brother, don't worry, we will be the hands and feet of the new village from now on, and we will follow orders. Wherever brother points, we will hit. There will be no ambiguity. They live near Zindu, and of course they know a little about the big and small things in the city. This new seed has been in the limelight recently, and the nobles in the city almost rolled up their sleeves and started fighting over these new seeds. As a result, what they, the nobles, see as muddy legs, will be able to grow new grain next year without having to fight for it. Sure enough, it's easy to enjoy the cool weather with your back against a big tree. You must hug your uncle's thigh tightly. The village chief smiled and banged the pipe pot on the stone a few times, his eyes full of pride. Although he is old and can no longer fight with the barbarians, he is still very good at deceiving people. The son-in-law came back for a visit last night and went back to the military camp this morning. The old wife at home must be taking care of the two children. The goddaughter said this morning that she was cooking lunch and she didn't know what good dishes to cook. He really wanted to drink two tails now? The slightly warm spring breeze playfully picked up the old man's gray beard and wanted to pull it, but unfortunately he couldn't pull it, so he had to run elsewhere to have fun. This spring day when all things revive, this season of sowing hope, this fresh green is so full that people can't get enough of it. In the backyard of the Lee family, through the half-open window, Grandma he saw the warm sun outside, the grape trellises covered with green vines, and the swings swaying in the breeze. She couldn't help but sigh. Earlier, I only taught the young lady the rules for half a day, and she was so shocked that she fell flat. Now that the young lady takes the initiative to learn the rules, and is so serious and hard-working, she should be happy and thank God. But why is she getting more and more frightened? Miss, why are you not lazy anymore? Miss, why aren't you greedy? Miss, why don't you pretend to be stupid? In the past few days, the young lady learned whatever she taught her, and she learned it very quickly, almost all at once, which made her unable to react many times. If this continues, in another half-month, she may not have anything to teach her. At that time, will she be unemployed? End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 460. Chapter 460. This is a little secret between me and Funiur. Miss, look how nice the weather is outside. Would you like to play on the swing for a while? Jian is holding a few tea jars and is learning to distinguish tea leaves, what type, origin, and taste. It is very complicated. Wealthy people pay too much attention to their tea drinking. You must understand it. Otherwise, you will be ridiculed if you cannot tell whether the tea is good or bad when you go out or go somewhere. She was having a headache about the difference between Mingqian Longjing and Yuqian Longjing. When she heard this, she responded smoothly, "No need, Mama. You should talk about these two kinds of tea again. I still can't understand the difference." Grandma he stepped forward and spoke slowly. In the front yard, Mrs. Lee raised her feet and looked at the door of the yard, hoping that her second son would come back soon. My granddaughter has been dying these days, and she is more anxious than anyone else. When a child is lazy and doesn't like to study, she gets anxious. But the child suddenly became diligent, and she was even more scared. How could such a good child change his gender? Could it be that the previous blow was too great? When she got up early, she drove her son into the city and asked him to buy all the delicious snacks in the city. As a result, the second child did not wait to come back, but the third child and Zhao Yuru were expected to come back. The couple entered the door and looked for their little niece. They didn't see any shadow, which was strange. Old Mrs. Lee pointed to the backyard and responded, "I'm learning the rules in the backyard, and I'm very serious about it. If you can coax her out, you will be a great contributor to our family." Zhao Yuru raised her foot and was about to go over, but Li Laosan stopped her and then entered the backyard by himself. Occasionally I looked up from the good news and was really happy to see that my third uncle was back. She ran out while shouting, and hugged Li Laosan's arm. Third uncle, when did you come back?" Li Laosan smiled and crouched down, carrying his little niece on his back, and walked slowly under the grape trellis, fearing that the sun would burn her. Then he said, "I came to see you as soon as I entered the door. My third uncle brought you sticky cakes and delicious snacks. Uncle San is the best." Jiyan kicked her little feet and smiled with big eyes. "Mama," he wanted to step forward to salute, but the third child waved her hand and drove her back to the front yard. For a while, only the two of us were left in the backyard. Li Laosan sat on the swing, put his little niece on his lap, and asked in a low voice, "Uncle San, I heard that our Funiur was wronged and is not happy." Jiyan felt very ashamed thinking that third uncle had come back from so far away and had a temper just because of her, so he quickly said, "No, third uncle, I just don't want to go out." After we went out, everyone didn't dare to mention this matter, but they all had strange smiles on their faces. It was obvious that I didn't fall into the cesspit, so I was not happy. Besides, I am a big kid, so I should learn the rules. Li Laosan tugged at his little niece's braid. It was thin and soft, and she looked like a grown-up child. He couldn't help but laugh. After looking around to make sure there was no one around, he leaned into his niece's ear and said, "Actually, the third uncle actually fell into a cesspit when he was a child." Jiyan's eyes widened in shock and she quickly covered her mouth. Li Laosan nodded vigorously, for fear that his niece would not believe it, and added, "When I was a child, I went to the toilet. Because it was dark, I accidentally fell down and half of my body was dirty. Fortunately, it was summer. I was afraid that your grandma would scold me and run away. I went to the ditch to wash myself off. The big kong at home is very long, and your father and I happened to be sleeping at the end of the kong. Your grandma still smelled the stench and thought your father had pooped his pants, so she gave your father a good beating." Jiyan thought about it for a while. Her father was in a daze in his sleep. He was beaten so hard that he looked confused. She couldn't stop laughing. "Ha ha ha, my father is so pitiful. What a disaster." She stretched out her little hand and rubbed the bruises on her belly, laughing so hard. Li Laosan also laughed, coughed twice, and secretly told his niece, "Keep it a secret for Uncle San, I never dared to tell your father. Your father still doesn't know why he was beaten that time." "Of course, I won't tell my father," Jiyan quickly promised, and even stretched out his little hand to pull the hook with Sanbo. "The hook will not change for 100 years, and whoever changes will be a puppy." Li Laosan rubbed the top of his niece's head and said slowly, "Fu Niur, look, who didn't make mistakes when he was young, and who didn't get laughed at by others. So, we are not afraid, we will grow up slowly. Yes or no?" "Yeah, yeah," Jiyan felt very warm in her heart, knowing that third uncle exposed his scandal, just to enlighten her and make her happy. Outsiders say that the third uncle is the most ordinary and least capable of the four brothers in the Li family. Actually, they don't know that the third uncle is the most talented among the Li brothers. His character is careful and gentle, filial and peaceful, but he never wants to compete with his brothers, even if it is just a word of praise. He will only work quietly and do his part for the family. In the front yard, Mrs. Li and Zhao Yuru were so worried. They were so happy to finally see Mr. Li coming with the little his back. "Fu Niur, come here, let's see what delicious food your third uncle has bought for you." Old Mrs. Li smiled happily and held her granddaughter in her arms. She was so generous that she gave all the snack boxes to her granddaughter, and she was no longer worried about her granddaughter eating too many snacks and accumulating food. These are not important now, just get your granddaughter back to normal as soon as possible. Ji-Yun smiled and hugged the snack box, and ran around the house. It wasn't until Grandma, third uncle, and even Aunt He and Shui Ling Shui Yun all had snacks that she sat back in Grandma's arms. Eat happily. The old lady breathed a long sigh of relief. She looked at her third son again and felt extremely strange. She couldn't help but ask, "Third son, how did you coax Fu Niuer? This child is smart, but when he gets into trouble, he can't help anyone. I can't persuade you. My family has been worried a lot these days." Li Lao-san scratched the back of his head, winked with his niece, and said with a smile, "Mom, I can't say, this is a secret between me and Fu Niuer." "Yes, a secret," Ji-Yin quickly agreed, but she sprayed out some snack crumbs, which made the old lady afraid of choking, so she quickly gave her water and stopped asking questions. Zhao Yuru pinched her niece's cheek and said distressedly, "We Fu Niuer have lost weight these days, so we need to eat more. I won't be busy at home in a few days, and I will go to Luoan with my grandma to live for a while." After saying that, she turned to her mother-in-law and said, "Mom, we have something to discuss with you when we come back." "What's going on?" the old lady asked. "Are you running out of money to buy a shop?" Zhao Yura quickly shook her head. "Mom, I'm afraid I don't need to buy the shop. I have new business." Li Lao-san also smiled and said, "Mom, yesterday Dean Joe came to our shop, had a set meal, and then asked me, 'Do you want to open a canteen in the college?' He said that the college originally had an hour's rest at noon and evening, and then the students would run out to eat, which wasted time and made eating less fun. Therefore, he wanted to reorganize the college dining hall and close it at noon in the future. The gate of the courtyard is closed, the students all eat in the cafeteria, and then go to class after eating. Then move the hour saved at noon to the afternoon. In this way, school will be over in the middle of the afternoon, and you will have 2 hours to rest. Whether you are walking around in the school or playing, you will have enough time and there is no need to rush." Mrs. Lee was happy to hear this and responded, "This is a good thing. Every time I go to Luoan, Grn comes back for lunch and dinner in the evening, and he comes and goes in a hurry, and he has no chance to say a few words to them. From now on, you can rest for 2 hours in the afternoon and evening together, and the children will have time to go home, eat well, and talk. It's a pity that I still have to live on campus. It would be better if I could go to school and live in our new courtyard." Zhao Yuru also smiled and said, "Yes, mother, I think so too. It's a pity that the academy is afraid that students will get into trouble if they live outside, so they have to live on campus." The old lady smiled and said, "Take your time, maybe you can change it later." After saying that, she pondered for a moment and then asked, "Dean Joe, can you tell me how to calculate the capital and how to divide the profits?" End of this chapter.